Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Hungover podcast. This is for the week starting on February 18th, 2018. My name's Ivan. Over there,
I'm Julien. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I want to tell the people that they can find this podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud in audio form and also on YouTube in video form, where there's a nice B-roll going on in the background for your viewing pleasure, as you see our beautiful faces as well. Yvonne, we're going to be talking about something a little more pertinent to the American crowd, and it's going to be mass shootings. We're just going in, apparently. And gun control as well.
This week,
yes.
So.
We're going to be covering that and just sort of, another source of news or another conversational point on the gun control, the ever ongoing debate about gun control in America, and maybe you guys are interested in our opinions. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that when we get to the topic of the show. But we start our podcast out every single week by asking each other, what'd you drink last night, and what media have you been consuming, Yvonne?
Let's see. Last night was Russian. Well, this whole week has been Russian pancake celebration week. It's called Maslenitsa. It's a celebration of the ending of winter, and you eat pancakes because it's that golden color.
Winter ends in Russia? Is that a thing?
Yeah, we have to ride our unicycles with our bear friends at some point. It's very difficult in the winter because of all the ice, but eventually there is a summer. It thaws. It's for 3 weeks. We enjoy ourselves tremendously.
I'm impressed.
So the pancake represents the golden sun, which brings the thaw, and that's why we eat it. It also kind of times out in terms of when Catholic Lent began, I think, this year. Mm-hmm. Fat Tuesday and all that jazz. It was the same week. So there's that, and so I had a bunch of really delicious food. So with our Russian pancakes, they're yeast-based pancakes. So
that's awesome.
You let the dough rise a little bit, and then we call them baking pancakes. We don't call it frying up a pancake, which is kind of weird.
Oh, just in Russian?
Yeah.
That's the verb?
The verb is to bake the
strange.
Bliny.
Well, it's a cake, so you bake a cake, right?
There you go. So we had some salted salmon, some herring.
Nice. Oh my god.
Various deli meats.
Savory pancakes,
yes.
Unlike American pancakes, where we just douse it in as much sugar as possible.
That's true, because American pancakes are thick and horrible. These are thin,
but
more like
you'll
a
still
crepe.
Eat them.
I haven't had a pancake since the first time I went to a diner after getting back from Turkmenistan.
Okay.
And then some caramelized onion. We also had at the table some honey, some condensed milk, some strawberries, blueberries.
Okay, so you got your sweet pancakes too.
Sour cream, of course.
Oh my god, that sounds so good.
So you just mix and mash as you want. I like the salted salmon with some sour cream, just thin sour cream laid out. Wrap that up, eat it like a burrito.
Any dill? I feel like
we didn't have dill, ironically.
Didn't have dill. That is funny. How did that happen?
I don't think we bought fresh dill. I think that's how that happened.
Damn.
You're right, though. It definitely should have been there. But on the next day, this morning on Sunday, we had farmer's cheese. So you mix farmer's cheese with sour cream, and then you put a little bit of sugar in there. And if you want to get real fancy with it, I put some blueberries, some strawberries, a little bit of condensed milk drizzled on top. You roll that bad boy, and then you eat it.
That is a lot.
It's great.
Is farmer's cheese like cottage cheese?
Farmer's cheese is a little like cottage cheese, but it's not as liquidy.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's a little bit more solid. And last night with our pancake dinner,
man, you guys had pancakes for dinner and then for breakfast?
Yeah, 2 different batches.
I need to make pancakes now. Can we
I can give
this
you
podcast?
I can give you the Russian way of doing it.
Thank you. You should. I think I still have some yeast, so
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's
Dry
like
active yeast.
4 cups of milk heated up so that the yeast is activated in it. Some flour, like 3 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 eggs beaten and then added, yeast obviously, and then a few other things.
Okay.
Some butter obviously, and
Sounds good.
you let that sit and rise at 2 different points for a few minutes, like 15 minutes at the end when everything's mixed together, and then like a little bit at the beginning to get the yeast just started.
How much of a dough is it? It's not like liquid like our pancakes are, the
It is
batter.
pretty liquid.
It
Yeah.
is liquidy,
It's
and it'll
like
rise?
yeah, so it'll rise a bit and then it's still like a liquidy consistency.
Oh, that's
So
weird.
so it's not because there's more milk and like liquid byproducts than there is
Okay.
solid byproducts. So like when you think of it like a bread rising, it's really thick, because that
Yeah,
gluten
yeah.
is super activated, but it's not the same way in these pancakes.
Okay.
But that way you get those holes in the pancakes.
Yeah,
That's what you want to see visually.
that's nice. The
Uh,
little CO2 holes.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of pancakes. I think we
I
made
can
about
imagine.
30, 40 of like
Oh my
thin style
God.
crepes, pretty large. Like I was making them this big. And for the audio listeners, it's about the size of my head, which is like I don't know, a foot across
A
or
melon.
something. Yeah.
Nice melon.
And we had an unoaked Chardonnay last night
Whoa.
to go with
Whoa.
it, which wasn't the best in choice. I think like a solid stout would go pretty well. We had some cider too. I think a stout would go better, but it
A
is
stout
really
with a
doubling
pancake.
down on your carbohydrates.
Well, it's celebrating the end of winter when you stock up on carbohydrates a lot. So
So it's the last time you're legally allowed to eat that many carbs in a meal.
yes, that's why you should do it. You just double down.
And then, sorry, my dad just asked if I had arrived. I forgot to make
Did
sure
he
that
ask
knew.
you if you had enough pancakes?
That he
Probably.
didn't. I think he made the correct assumption that I had enough.
Okay.
But last night, after, so we ate dinner pretty early, like around 5, so that we
Uh-huh.
could come out of our coma and then go watch The Phantom Thread.
Oh my god.
So then we checked out The Phantom Thread. It ranks lower in my tier of like Oscar-nominated movies this season. It's definitely an intriguing movie. There's a pretty good performance by the 3 lead actors. So
Yeah.
excuse me. And what's really telling is that the only person that I can really remember the name of is Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yes.
But the lead actress and then the woman,
Leslie Manville, best supporting actress.
yeah, she plays his sister, I think,
I
in the
think
film.
so.
Yes,
And Johnny
she's
Greenwood
she's incredible.
did the store.
And Vicky Krebs, she's from Luxembourg and plays the kind of love interest in the piece, and
Okay.
she's pretty astounding as well. I thought, in general, it was a very well done movie in terms of everything was put together in a way that didn't feel super over directed or over stylized. It felt kind of natural in its flow, even dealing with some unnatural characters like Daniel Day-Lewis's character is very much a caricature of a human being. I don't think many people are like that in real life. And
Okay.
the relationship has its very taut and fraught moments. But I thought they were good performances. There were a lot of subtleties in the way that things were handled. The story is interesting but not great. I think the real thing to watch in this movie is kind of like how all of the world building elements come together to form this world in which they live. A few of the shots are pretty astounding. There's this really cool shot that so Daniel Day-Lewis's character drives around this very hot car from that time, and he drives fast everywhere, and it's like this very quick, speedy 2-seater. and there's a shot that's from the back where it's just you see the car outline.
Yeah.
And a little bit beyond the car outline. So it's not like that third-person GTA camera view fully, but it's not like inside the car looking out.
That's weird.
It's a really interesting middle shot between the two, which is I haven't seen a lot, if at all, and it really works in terms of making it an intriguing and interesting shot and keeping the action and the car sequences as part of the movie and that relationship. So it's a really cool shot. There are some other shots that I liked what they were attempting to do, but I didn't feel it fully came through. But I think all in all, it was a really well-made movie. Probably deserving of checking out. I might make this a stream it if I had to. I think there are some other movies that deserve to be seen on that big screen. But there are certainly some shots that I think are well worth seeing on the big screen and a movie theater setting. And I also had some problems. I think it was specifically the movie theater I was in didn't balance out the audio really well, especially at the beginning of the movie.
Worst.
It was like you couldn't really hear the words that people were saying clearly.
What are you paying for?
I know.
Jesus Christ, come on.
So that was
Did that
annoying.
get fixed?
It did get fixed, like by definitely by like a quarter to a third of the movie. Like everybody's dialogue was clear and specific, and you can hear everything.
That's a lot of the movie to miss.
Yeah, by the first bit, when it's like you're trying to introduce exposition, it's the first bit of a lot of movies is really dialogue heavy. Interestingly enough, P.T. Anderson's last movie that was super critically acclaimed, There Will Be Blood, had like the first 20 minutes there weren't any words uttered.
Right, exactly. That was a cool opening. So
it's an interesting dichotomy in that there were words, but I couldn't understand them, versus there weren't words, and it told itself. I recommend to go see it or check it out. If you're not super into like the technical camera shoddy aspect of things, it's definitely stream it. But if you're into that kind of seeing film as a unique medium in which you can see these kinds of ways that directors and DOPs and cinematographers portray how action moves and the quotidian of life through shots, then I recommend going to see it. But hey, that was me. How about you, Julian?
Well, Vaughn, I've been playing a lot of Dragon Ball FighterZ. That game is incredibly fun. Looks exactly like the anime.
It really does. I saw you streaming it, and it's really, really looks exactly like the game or the TV show.
It looks like how you remember the show looking, because it's running at 60 frames per second, and the models are really cool. And actually, I noticed that the models were slightly different than I remember them being from the show. Mm-hmm. And so that's because they've based the models off of the current running show, Dragon Ball Super.
Oh, interesting.
You can watch it on Crunchyroll, which I then immediately did. So I started watching that show. I'm like 10 or 15 episodes in, something like that. They're all 20 minutes long, and it's like they, the original Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball, they had a lot of filler because the production company, they had a lot of filler episodes rather, because the production company wanted an episode every single week from Akira Toriyama, who is the director and artists in the show, and obviously there are many more people involved in it, but he's the famous one. And so that's sort of why there are, I think, over 1,000 episodes of Dragon Ball Z alone, and six
of them are like 6 times 10 of them are Goku just holding the spirit ball over his head.
Dude, everyone loves the spirit bomb. Spirit bomb's awesome. And honestly, it's not worth watching the entire show. It's worth watching like a few key moments, a few like 5 episodes here, 5 episodes there, and you can get the whole story.
But it is enriching. It is why you love these DBZ characters so much because you spent so much worthless time with them that you like
why
their
I
stupid
like
quirks. It's exactly why reality TV works, because it's just hours of nonsense that is not valuable to anything. But you enjoy how characters react to different situations.
Right. So with Dragon Ball Super, I think it's only 125 episodes long.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like very little if you compare it to if you compare it to anything else. No, that's an incredible amount of time to waste watching. But I think because I don't know if it's airing on TV or anything, but I think they sort of decided to take a different route. I think Akira Toriyama's still doing it. And he's sort of like taking a different route. Like we had so much filler in the past series, and this is a sequel, by the way. Dragon Ball GT, not canon, even though Akira Toriyama did it. That they just threw that out, and this is canon. Dragon Ball Super. Okay. So there's 125 episodes. They sort of got the idea that they were throwing too much filler in the other shows. And so this show just doesn't waste any time and sort of jumps right into a main conflict against. I mean, everyone knows Beerus now. I guess he's the god of destruction now, and he's come to destroy the Earth. And within the first, I think 5 episodes, by the 5th episode he gets there. So the first 5 episodes are kind of filler. So it's weird because they definitely have the flow of a non-fillery show nowadays. Because nowadays shows are streamed and to be binge watched instead of serialized. But there's still a lot of filler in the show. So there's just weird things that I don't know. They're trying to build up some characters, and they brought back Emperor Pilaf from Dragon Ball, and he's just like the comic relief. And it's weird because his character and the two characters that I forget the name of, the little girl, and then he's like there's like a what's the dog called? A corgi or something. Uh-huh. Or maybe he's like a bear or a raccoon. I don't know. I can't really tell. And he's just like dressed as a ninja or something. And they just do all his bidding. But they're always trying to get the Dragon Balls. That's just their main thing. That's what they did in Dragon Ball, the original show. Yeah. And basically their characters are drawn with a thicker outline in certain scenes. And I guess that's to sort of give them the idea that they're like a chibi-like character. I don't know. That's like a cute Japanese thing. Yeah. So yeah, and they're really small characters too, which is hilarious.
That's who the cat thing is.
Yeah, that's Beerus. He's a cat that's like an Egyptian cat, but he's the god of destruction. He woke up 39 years ago, according to lore, and he's just on a destruction pathway to find. He woke up because he had a dream that he was destined to fight the Super Saiyan God or Super Saiyajin God. That's what they say in Japanese. I don't know. And that's why he's on this mission. And he found out that maybe there are Saiyans left on Earth, so that's why he's on Earth. And he said if he loses the fight, he's going to destroy Earth. So, and it's just. It was kind of a weird fight. I wasn't that into the fight.
So wait, if he loses the fight, Earth is destroyed. If he wins the fight, he kills Goku?
No, sorry. If he beats Goku, which ends up... spoiler alert, fuck it. He ends up becoming a Super Saiyan God. He becomes Super Saiyan God. That's what he does. Okay. So it's two gods fighting, Goku versus Beerus, who's the god of destruction. If he beats Goku, he'll destroy the Earth. If he doesn't, then if Goku beats him, he won't destroy the Earth, or whatever. That's the conflict that they're thrown into within the first 10 episodes, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about it, because Beerus is a god, and he's way stronger than anything they've ever encountered, and then Goku becomes a god for a certain amount of time and fights him. And so where do you go from there? Like, there's no other, maybe they just keep bringing in gods now. Like, this is only 10 episodes in a 125 episode series.
So
I don't really
understand. Super Saiyan God transformation. So you become a Super Saiyan God and then fall out of being a Super Saiyan God?
Yeah. He was only allowed to be a Super Saiyan God. Okay, we're going full spoilers for the first 10 episodes. Dragon Ball Z for you people, or Dragon Ball Super.
This is why Dragon Ball was the best, because you didn't have to have increasingly powerful people. It was just like they know how to manipulate ki a little better, or their technique is a little better. So you have to be a little faster or stronger than whatever. Man,
look,
I miss Dragon Ball.
It's a ridiculous show, but it's nice to see. Because towards the end of Dragon Ball Z, you never really got to see Goku fighting at his full strength. He turned Super Saiyan 3 at some point for some reason. It was never like a long drawn out process for him to go Super Saiyan 3, like it was, for instance, when he transformed into a Super Saiyan against Frieza. But the Super Saiyan 3 part was just sort of thrown in there, and you only get to see him fight once as Super Saiyan 3.
What about Super Saiyan 4?
That's bullshit, all right? It's not canon. It doesn't... Dragon Ball GT, it's the worst. It was the worst waste. That was such a waste of my time. I can't believe I actually watched that entire show. Anyways... I'll report back when I watch more of the show to see what goes on.
Thank you. That has been our report from the field from Julien. We'll now hand it back to Julien to talk about other things that he has done.
I played Monster Hunter World. I played Dragon Ball FighterZ. I played Bayonetta. Came out on the Switch. I'm excited about that. And then it was Chinese New Year this past weekend. Friday. The exact day was Friday. And so my mom had a Chinese New Year party, so I made something for the Chinese New Year party.
What?
I made some taro cakes, which were really good, apparently.
Nice.
It was a long, drawn-out process, though. I can't say... I need to optimize my game with taro cakes. It took me like 3 hours to make all of them.
How many did you make?
I made two... 9-inch round pans.
Okay.
9-inch. So, and then I cut them into little rectangles that were, I don't know, like 4 inches. And then I fried them. But you had to steam them first. And you had to steam them for like an hour. It takes a long time. But those were good. And then saw a bunch of my friends, drank a lot of beer, a lot of Tsingtao. It is the year of the dog. Tsingtao is a great Chinese beer. If you've never had it, you should go check it out. Then I had some vodka, and I went.
The classic
my
Chinese
friend, drink. Vodka is a classic Chinese drink, and then I had some baijiu, which is a classic Chinese drink. You know what it is. Pour one out for the homies, man. That stuff is nasty. He's about to puke. Baijiu is a fermented rice wine that's usually around 30 to 50% alcohol, and it's very popular in China, mainland China specifically. All the men will drink it. You know, they
those
take
are
little
real
shots
men.
of it. Yes, those are the real men.
Those are real men. People
No,
choose to drink baijiu.
It's the one that we had in college in that sweet dragon bottle.
Yeah.
That bottle was so cool, and we were trying to finish the bottle or the alcohol in the bottle. One, because it just turned into a running joke because it was so bad. It would make us puke almost, or at least one of us.
It tasted like fermented plum that had gone bad about 6 months before they decided that maybe we should
bottle
this. And it gave the worst burps I have ever experienced in my life.
The burps would make you gag. It's pretty bad.
And it became not just a running joke of how bad this thing was. It became the punishment for for different games and or activities.
Oh god. Yeah, so apparently there's a Baijiu bar. Well, there is a Baijiu bar on Houston Street in New York City. I've been there. Surprisingly, not bad. They make elaborate $10 to $15 cocktails with baijiu instead of any other alcohol. And so the cocktails themselves would be pretty good if they used any other alcohol. So so they got some skill there, but they need to change their liquor. But the baijiu that I had last night, which was Saturday, was actually pretty good. I actually kind of enjoyed it. It still sort of had the fermented taste, just very faintly.
Mm-hmm.
Not like punching in the face like that one we had. This one, I could see myself drinking 2 glasses of instead of just one. But I wouldn't go more than that. It was pretty bad. And then yeah, that was that. That's about it for me in terms of what I've done. But Yvonne, it was Chinese New Year, and the Chinese invented something that sort of changed the world. They invented a thing called gunpowder.
Holy crap, that was a really roundabout way to get to what we're talking about.
And what else? We're just gonna go into it anyway.
No, it was a great transition. That's
Look,
masterful.
Season 2, man. We're coming in strong here. All right, I've gotta step up my game.
It's
But yeah,
been stepped up.
the Chinese changed the world with gunpowder, and currently in America, we're dealing with a lot of gun control problems.
Yes.
Particularly because there seems to be a mass shooting every other month now. In America, you start hearing about these, sometimes in a school, sometimes there was one in a nightclub. They can happen anywhere, which is actually incredibly scary if you start thinking about it too much.
Yes.
And so, yeah, and usually these are in public places. So, Yvonne, where do you want to start with this? This very heavy topic.
Yeah. Let's start with we're not experts in it, but we wanted to talk about it because it is something that has been in the public discourse in the past few weeks and years and throughout our lifetime, really. I mean, we grew up in the shadow of having lived at the time when the Columbine High School massacre occurred. I know that definitely, I remember the day that it happened and like different things. That day also happened to be like my parents' anniversary, so it's a weird day. But I think that it's something that we've grown up just hearing about the discussions for a very long time, and I think that it deserves some careful attention, and we're going to bring up some facts, and we might not be the best voices to discuss it, but I don't think we need to shy away from it as people who have a podcast or a voice or have just generally well-formed and thought-out opinions on a lot of different issues. So I think we can get into it with the fact that America has the worst gun violence really in the world. It's incredible to look at the statistics of global gun violence and see them. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can sway those factors as well, in terms of like, not all violence that you can find in the world is done through gun violence. A lot of places where there could be an immense amount of gun violence, things are underreported or not reported, or there aren't a lot of verifiable statistics around the world. I mean, if we look at combat zones like Syria, or places where gun violence has been part of standard life, like Iraq for a long time, Afghanistan, various places across Africa.
Yeah.
In terms of revolutions or rebellious bands, or just like the gun violence that erupted after the Arab Spring. It's a lot of different ways of packing it, but I think that the U.S. is still the world leader in terms of like gun violence being a predominant threat to different people. And places like Australia, their reactions to how gun violence occurred, like UK, it's against the law to just own a gun in the same way that it is in the States. In Australia, they banned guns as well, and that was in response to a very public and devastating mass shooting in Australia. And in the U.S., the debate seems to be around a lot of different issues that don't necessarily pertain to guns, or the fact that gun lobbyists have a lot more influence in issue in Congress than they do in different other houses of parliament or governments. And it seems that in the U.S., we can get into these repeated cycles of saying thoughts and prayers go out and different things, and you heard it from the teenagers themselves who were in this in this school recently in Florida, which was affected by a mass shooting where 17 students died. You heard one of the students saying, "We're tired of thought and prayers. We want actual change, things to happen." And I think we can go with recently. The only action that's been taken on a federal level is that in 2004, the assault weapons ban that was passed under the Clinton administration was allowed to lapse, and in 2005 they passed a law that protected gun manufacturers and the people who sell guns from being liable for people who commit shootings or anything from their sales. So it seems that we have, rather than looking into limiting or being restrictive on a federal level or even many state levels, we've been dominated by this idea that guns shouldn't be legislated in this way. I mean, what's your opinion on the conflict as it is with gun legislation at the moment?
Well, I mean, I believe that I don't think. Well, okay. We have more. I think it's twice the amount of guns, if not. I don't know the exact statistic, but there are more guns in America than there are people, and we have something like 300 million people in this country. And I mean, I would never buy a gun personally. I don't want. I think that it's very obvious that it's way too easy for anyone to get a gun in this country. So we need to have some sort of regulation in place that is much more restrictive than what it is currently in states such as Texas, Florida, in the South, etc. Because that's where I think that's where it's easiest to get a gun. In a state in like Tennessee, it's very easy to get a gun. In Texas, it's very easy to get a gun. And people walk around. I was in Tennessee this summer. People walk around with guns just on their holster, on their belt. Just regular civilians just walking around with guns. And that was a huge, I guess, culture shock for me. I've never seen anyone that wasn't a police officer or a soldier, because we have armed forces in the subway sometimes, which is kind of crazy. Like people walking around with assault rifles. I've seen it.
In Penn Station.
In Times Square. Yeah, in Penn Station. It's insane. I don't think that person's going to stop anything from happening to begin with, and he just has a gun. But
it is really jarring to when you you go up the escalator and there's just three I don't know what I think they're military people. I don't even think they're police officers.
Yeah, they're definitely not police officers.
And they're just holding an
M4. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's really frightening.
Yeah, and I actually, I mean, when I was in Tennessee, I actually went to a shooting range and shot a gun. So I've held a gun, I've shot a gun. I only shot handgun. That would be crazy. Handgun, and it's really I don't know if my heart's ever beated that fast. When I was shooting that gun, it's like insane how much power is behind just. I just had a 9mm Glock in my hand shooting. We wanted to shoot hand cannons because in New York City, I don't believe you can even shoot hand cannons at a shooting range without
handguns, man.
Sorry, handguns. I played
so
too many
Destiny
games.
2.
Too much Destiny 2. Hand cannons exist, all right? No, sorry to. But getting back to the point, I think there should be a lot more regulation on on obtainable guns, and I don't think it's necessary for anyone to own like an M4 semi-automatic rifle. I think that's a little ridiculous. I don't know why you would ever need to have that. Even gun collectors, like, that's still ridiculous that you would have that in your house at all.
Yeah.
Or a sniper rifle. I think you can buy. I'm pretty sure I've seen this guy on YouTube. He just has a Barrett 50 cal in his pickup truck, and I saw him shoot. He took it out to some back, like, the woods, and shot a piece of titanium. It's actually a pretty cool video, but it was incredibly horrifying to see that gun actually in action. That gun is made to shoot tanks or something. It's like an anti-vehicle 50 caliber bullet. It's insane, right? Anti-armor, whatever. So yeah, I don't think that Americans, that any normal civilian has any place holding one of those guns, personally. But I don't necessarily disagree. I don't necessarily think that a normal civilian shouldn't be able to get a gun. I think that, ideally, in my opinion, in like an ideal world, I feel like there would just be no guns. but that's not going to happen, and I don't think, especially not in America, and I don't think that it's so far-fetched, because people like to go hunting. So I don't think it's, and there's a some would say a reason to go hunting. We have to control the deer population sometimes, right? So they let during hunting season, you're allowed to kill more deer than usual, I guess. So I don't think it's, I don't like the assault rifles. That's a little overkill, literally.
There are a lot of things that are surrounding a lot of the things that you're talking about, that, like, so, like, from 94 to 2004, the federal assault weapon ban, it was designed to prohibition on the manufacture for civilian use of certain semi-automatic firearms. It defined as assault weapon, as well as certain ammunition magazines, and defined as large capacity. So that was an attempt in 1994, after a series of mass shootings that occurred then, to curb kind of the amount of these kind of assault rifle style guns being distributed into the population. And it was fairly... To say that it was fairly effective is kind of weird, because it coincided with the number of gun deaths going down in the U.S. in general. But since then, I think that if we look at a lot of the statistics of like gun violence, like, you think about the bump stock that was used in the Las Vegas shooting. So basically, it allowed for a super large capacity, very fast firing rate for the gunmen in Las Vegas during that the Harvest Festival to shoot and kill and injure a lot of people. There, like, right, yeah, hundreds of people.
He was able to modify his gun, right?
Yeah, and
if I'm not mistaken,
fairly easy to do that. Yeah. It's just really, I think it's very easy. Yeah, so like 100 people were no, fatalities was 58, injured was 546 at the Las Vegas, Nevada, that shooting during the Harvest Festival. And that's a lot of people. Now, that number I just quoted is from the Mother Jones investigation, and the number of injured might not necessarily be from the shooting itself. From those statistics, it could probably deal with like people being trampled from running away or different things. So bear that in mind. But it's still allowed for this gunman to fire in a tremendous amount of bullets. I forget what the number was, but when I heard of how much he shot during that time, it was a crazy amount of ammo that he could go through just because he had these really highly modified weapons, and it's fairly easy to do those. I think you can find like YouTube tutorials and different things on how to do them.
So it's not even exactly. And also there, I believe it's true that there are more deaths from guns, from not hand cannons, from handguns than there are from assault rifles in America per year.
Right.
I think, and that may be skewed because there are just more handguns than there are assault rifles. In possession. In possession. In possession.
The other thing to look at it is how you break down gun deaths. So if you look at it, about half of gun deaths that occur in the U.S., as tracked by like 538, they have a pretty good, as 538 tends to do, they have a pretty good infographic on deaths that were, I don't remember what year they're from. They're like 2014 or something, that they stopped the tracking of their information, but essentially like half of gun deaths that they were tracking for the information of were suicides, and in suicides the vast majority of people use handguns.
Yeah, you're not going to use an assault rifle. That would be pretty hard to do. Well, it's probably pretty easy to do in reality, but it would be easier to use a handgun.
Yes. So there's a lot of handguns used in suicide. So fatalities due to handguns are inflated based on suicide rates. But if we're talking about mass shootings or shootings like that, then the numbers tend to balance out a little bit. Especially when we talk about mass shootings, it's mostly assault rifles. But Virginia Tech, 32 people died in Virginia Tech. That was 2 handguns.
Well, right. So, I mean, I think it really comes down to this. When you go, what are guns? What is the purpose of a gun? It's to kill, or it pretty much
to defend. Well, it depends.
To kill something.
NRA would say that it's to defend or be preventative.
Yeah.
The other way that they're saying is that when somebody has a gun, that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. So not necessarily is it to kill; it can be used preventative. Like,
I guess
the Soviet Union developed nuclear weapons as a deterrent to the USA ever using a nuclear weapon again, right? So there's that balancing act too.
I guess so. You're right. Well, I still feel like the primary purpose of a gun is to kill something, personally, but. I mean, why? Yeah, so when you buy a gun, I agree that it can obviously be used for defense. That's why police officers have guns. And they also wear bulletproof vests sometimes. So that's also another method of defense. And I don't see a problem in you having something to defend you, like defending your home. That's very important. Someone breaks into your home and you have a gun, then you're probably better equipped to defend your home. Right. I agree with that, right? But
the statistics, I don't know if they necessarily bear that out. But yes, that's the idea.
That's true, because a lot of people hold the ammo separate from the gun because maybe they have children. So if someone breaks into their home, they're not going to be able to have time to get the ammo, get the gun, load the gun, and then all the things similar. A situation like that might roll out, right?
Alternatively, there are probably just as many accidental deaths due to handguns as
exactly
like people
that's why
defending themselves. So there's
right.
I hear the statistic all the time that you're more likely to shoot yourself than shoot whoever you're trying to defend yourself from in the home. And I don't know how that statistic is made, but it would stand to reason that the amount of time that there isn't someone breaking into your house, but you do have a handgun, those two things don't balance out in terms of time scaled. So the amount of chances of you having a handgun accident because you have it in your home to defend yourself, rather than being able to defend yourself when something actually does happen, you're more likely to be in an accident just because people aren't, that time isn't the same. It's like once for 15 minutes every 10 years or like the other time. So,
yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I guess for me, it comes down to I don't necessarily see a problem with people having guns necessarily if they're safe people, and they're just doing it to defend themselves. But I want it to be much, much, much more difficult to obtain the gun. I think there should be, obviously, they do background checks, but they're not as thorough as they could be. And as in this case, I think you told me earlier today there was a clerical error in one of these background checks, and the person ended up getting the gun because of an error in the recording somewhere.
Yeah. So
right? I don't
the
know.
Charleston Episcopal AME shooting, which was a white supremacist walked into a church and killed 9 people.
That was okay. Yeah,
he shouldn't have been able to purchase the gun based on a narcotics offense. This is from the FBI director afterwards going through what had happened. But due to a clerical error, this didn't show up in his instantaneous background check, and so he was able to purchase the gun.
Okay.
Not to mention, like for the recent one with Nicholas Cruz, this is the suspect in the case, who most definitely committed the atrocities. He had posted a lot of information. There had been a tip to the FBI about him several times. I think I've heard on NPR that there were several times that somebody had notified the FBI that he was either planning it or in the pre-planning stages of doing it, and he had many like police visits to him and he got expelled from school because he was a troubled kid. So there are a lot of red flags in that, and due to the FBI not following their own procedures of following up on tips, this shooting, which could have been prevented, wasn't being prevented. So even though he was legally able to buy the gun, and it's super easy to buy a gun in Florida, there's like basically no waiting period. In a few minutes, as long as you pass the background check, you can
get the same day
the AR-15, which
crazy.
he used. And so it's super easy to buy the gun. The background checks aren't always super effective, and sometimes they aren't super. It doesn't feel like they're super effective in terms of how the background check functions as mental health disorders and different things don't show up necessarily. But so in regards to what you're saying, like with this background check, like if you have a history of domestic abuse, if you have a lot of like any kind of violent charge against you, you should never be able to buy a gun.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Any gun that you have should be taken away from you, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so you're right. I think that there are a lot of things that we can do to limit who has access to purchasing weapons, but I also think the types of weapons, like we have been alluding to this whole podcast, can be restricted, and also some of these things like extra long capacity magazines or easily to modify capacity magazines. And I can't for the life of me figure out why any kind of silenced weapon is allowed to be purchased.
Right.
I'm super against like high capacity magazines. Any kind of gun that allows to be modified to fire at an extremely quick rate. And I know that people who know guns better than I do, because I've never owned nor shot a firearm before in my life, will be able to say like that's pretty much everything. Well, okay. Um, if you want a real challenge, don't shoot wolves from helicopters, Sarah Palin. Um,
Right.
and I think that we also need to restrict like silenced weapons, because I can't for the life of me figure out why you would need a silenced weapon unless it's
someone.
for killing someone, or I really can't think of anything now. There, other than like hunting and protection at home, there's like a big sports shooting community across the United States of America, and I mean, it's cool for what they can do, right? And the Winter
Mm-hmm.
Olympics are going on, and they have biathlon, which is you
Do
ski
they
and
use a
shoot.
real gun there,
Yeah,
or is it a specialized gun?
those are specialized guns.
Yeah, it's actually it's a rifle that
Yeah,
they use, right?
yeah.
Okay.
I've looked into how much they cost. They're very expensive.
I wanted to know what the origin of that the biathlon was.
Biathlon
'Cause-
is developed from one of the Scandinavian countries' military practices.
okay.
So in the Scandinavian countries, especially back in the day, they used to, where vehicles couldn't go, you could still ski through them. So
Mhm.
you would have the rifle on your back as patrol, and so it developed out of a training practice from
Oh, that's
like
pretty cool.
Norway or people around there.
That's interesting that they made it an Olympic sport.
It is, but I mean, the Winter Olympics has like 12 sports, so might as
Yeah,
well make it one.
and curling's one of them. Curling's great. I love it.
Curling
but,
is great.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, that is the thing. I think the thing that we can't focus on or allow us to be distracted by is that guns don't kill people, people kill people. Guns
Hmm.
kill people. I think that to look at the way that, like the NRA paints the problem as people with mental health disabilities or different things, and the vast majority of firearms owners are very safe and whatever. I think that you can have the vast majority of firearms owners being safe and everything, and still have restrictions on different things, and it be okay. I think that we have restrictions on everything from like fuel emissions to like water quality and different things, and there are limits that we should set as a society that we feel comfortable with as a whole, even if we have to allow for some allowances. So I think that is a lot of what can be done to set things up, and being like fighting against Wayne LaPierre is really important. Wayne LaPierre and the NRA, and some of the things that they've said, like the Wayne LaPierre, Mike Huckabee, a lot of them said Israelis solved a lot of school shootings by putting armed personnel into the schools and training for spotting the person, not for the weapon. But that Israelis themselves refuted that as a way to defend that what they did, or defend putting armed guards in schools, because the Israelis were facing, again, the way that they explain it is it was part of an anti-terrorism policy and set of rules. So that was it was a coordination of several larger policy things that helped to almost end school shootings in Israel, and a small portion of that was the armed guards in their schools, whereas Wayne LaPierre and a lot of congressmen are saying that this is the only way to be effective, is we don't need less guns, we need more guns. And I find that to be a really scary proposition. Like, being able to carry guns onto school campuses and different things, that's scary. As a person who was a TA, and then you are a current TA, if I had someone in my classroom that had a gun and then had to confront me about like an issue with their grades or something, I would feel really, really nervous about that kind of interaction.
Yeah.
More so than any other thing.
Right. No, it's a lethal weapon. It's ridiculous that could possibly be a reality soon. So, I wanted to ask I guess we've been recording for almost an hour now, but I wanted to ask if you knew. I mean, it's why the NRA has so much power. I guess that's I don't know particularly why there's such a powerful lobbying organization and why they have so much influence over or preventing the legislation from regulating guns more heavily in America. I don't know exactly why. I know. I guess they have a lot of donors. They have a lot of people donating to the cause because Americans like their guns. I would assume.
It's also a business deal. So it has a lot more to do with the economics of a firearms industry than the NRA itself. The NRA itself is it is a vocal wing of an arms industry. Mm-hmm. So it capitalizes on two things. So it capitalizes on a lot of money backing what was and could still be a booming gun and firearms industry, and the amount of money that was there to ensure protections, especially from 1994 on when we saw the assault weapons ban. So the NRA was really pushing to prevent these kinds of what they see as draconian laws, right? So they do donate millions and millions and millions of dollars across the state campaigns, federal campaigns, local campaigns. Their goal is to get pro firearms people across the U.S. And they have the backing of an entire firearms industry, which gets, for instance, would get contracts with U.S. military manufacturing and police forces and different things. So you have companies that are being propped up by the government, and they also want to increase their civilian sales or maintain their civilian sales. So there's a difference in that. We've seen firearms sales go down over the course of the past 20 years, basically. Mm-hmm. They've gone up and down, but it's lower now than it would have been previously. But you wanted firearms sales booms, right? So Remington just declared bankruptcy, which is whatever, they'll come back or whatnot. It's probably a formality of business holdings, but one reason that people were propping up that Obama was going to take away all of the guns that people had was to increase firearms sales, because firearms sales were in decline. And we can see that with Trump in power, Trump in power in a Republican Congress, it's hard to gin up that kind of thing, so you get firearms companies that are going out of business. Why the NRA is so powerful is because they have so much money from the firearms industry, from private donors, and they have a populace which actually has a tradition of gun ownership and things like that. So they're conflating the idea of what gun ownership is, and in the South, hunting is popular, sport shooting is popular, things like that. So they're mm-hmm. attempting to as closely conflate the ideas of gun ownership and taking away all guns with this kind of what has been a culture of gun ownership in a lot of different places, and also capitalizing on a lot of what I would personally deem to be crazy people who say that you need to own guns in order to be able to rebel against the draconian government. Yeah, which is beyond things. Like the police, police departments have tanks. Yeah. What is an AR-15 going to do against a tank? A lot of those kinds of things aren't fully thought through, but hey,
that's why people have Barrett 50 cows.
Yeah, that's true. And really high impact ammunition. But beyond all that, it's just you have a lot of people in Congress or positions of political power that are supported by the NRA, but you also have a lot of people that actually really do believe that the only way to stay safer is through gun sales, is to have a gun in the home. And so as much as the NRA is a voice of the gun industry and promoting firearm sales and making sure that there's no legislation for firearms whatsoever, basically, it is a tremendous thing that we can't miscalibrate, that some of the people who are in Congress and in positions of power actually do believe the things that the NRA is saying from their own personal position without having to take the NRA money. And it's a weird thing. Like, I think it was Senator Gifford from Arizona who was herself shot and almost fatally in a mass shooting in which a 9-year-old girl was killed in Arizona, and she came out afterwards and still said that she supported people having guns.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this really interesting dynamic of people who actually do believe that gun ownership is a quintessential part of the American citizenry and American life, but don't know how to balance that idea with, people being able to kill or injure 600 people in one go.
Yep.
I think we can have some reasonable measures of meeting sides, but in this atmosphere that we have today with Fox News, a fully Republican House of Representatives, Senate, President, a conservative Supreme Court, a vast number of state seats that have been lost have been captured by Republicans over the past 8 to 10 years. So with so much conservatism entering at local, state, and federal levels, it's hard to see that there can be any movement towards having rational, logical gun laws. And I agree with Obama when he said it was ridiculous and he was crying after the 20 kids were killed at Sandy Hook Elementary and we had no ability to get gun legislation passed. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, you're right. And I honestly think that there's no effort to meet in the middle either, which is really, I think, where this country gets things done if in terms of legislation. I think no legislation's ever going to pass in this country without some sort of compromise. So, obviously, you and I agree that there should be a lot more heavy regulation on guns, but it's probably not going to end up being that way. And the NRA is lobbying to make guns less regulated so more people can get, in a very layman's terms way of saying it. But there's no effort to meet in the middle either.
Yeah, so. And the piece of legislation that the Congress is more likely to look at and not pass, but to be put to the floor for votes is a piece of legislation that would allow for basically the least restrictive gun laws to be applied across all states and federalism be damned. So basically each state would have to accept the gun laws of the least enforced gun regulation state. But if you look at statistics, the states that have the highest amount of gun regulation have the lowest amount of gun deaths.
By chance.
Simple.
It's a coincidence.
Anyway, this is a subject that continues to piss me off and be one of those things where I can't understand the other side. Just be reasonable. And I think that we can all come together and figure out that there's no need to have I don't think that there's really a need to have a 30-round capacity for an assault rifle outside of competition.
Yeah.
Or military service.
I don't know why anyone would have an assault rifle to begin with. But hey, tell us in the comment section below what you think about gun regulation. Do you think we should have more guns? Do you think everyone in the country should have a gun to defend their home? Do you think that guns are cool? That's one thing. I think that a lot of guns are pretty elegantly made. I think it's a marvelous engineering feat, but I'm very afraid of them, and I've shot one.
I'm a huge hypocrite because I love the History Channel show Top Shot, and that's just gun shooting competition.
About guns, yeah.
I thought that show was fascinating, and I thought every gun that they used was really cool. I love the challenges and that kind of thing. And listen, it's sports shooting. It's like competition with guns.
That stuff's cool.
I'm okay with that, but I don't like it being vastly available to the majority of the public and being able to walk around with them just in a day-to-day life. That's where I find I have a lot of problems with.
Yeah, but Anyways, voice your opinion in the comment section below and tell us if you want us to revisit. And if you have any questions, of course, send them in. We always would love to answer them.
Or any comments, how we were wrong or how we can
of course.
improve what statistics we're using. Mother Jones' lies, according to Cato Institute.
Right. Let's have an open conversation, guys.
Yep.
That's how change is made. But yeah, we end our podcast every single week in a song in a segment called Hungover Radio. This is where you, the viewer, can send in your music, whether you wrote, produced, sang a song, etc. And we'll play it at the end of the podcast and link it out so you can get more views and things like that. But of course, if no one sends something in, then I get to pick one, and it's usually going to be from a video game because, 1, we don't get copyright strikes for that, and 2, I like video game music. Unless Ivan can think of one right now on the spot.
The Dragon Ball Z fighter theme.
Oh my god, I was about to do that, but I actually like that song. It's kind of crazy. The intro has a really cool song. Maybe you know what? We'll play that song. Fuck it. I was gonna play something from Shadow of the Colossus because it just released the remake and everyone's playing it and it looks really good in terms of graphics, but the controls are still shit. And but it's still a really cool game.
I've still never played
that game. I think. Tell us in the comments section below if we should play that game on this channel because that game has a really it's so really good at building atmosphere, and you sort of have this you're fighting these gigantic colossi and you sort of get the feeling that you shouldn't be killing them, but you know you have to. And it's like an internal struggle. And when you beat them, you don't get anything. You just sort of die a little bit on the inside a little bit. So it's a crazy story. There's like speed runs going on and shit like that. And the graphics look amazing on PS4 or PS4 Pro. So go check that game out if you can. We're not playing Shadow of the Colossus, but you can totally listen to Revived Power, which is what I was going to play. But now Ivan has reminded me the Dragon Ball song, the Dragon Ball Fighters song is way better. So we're going to listen to that. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. I'm Julien.
I'm Ivan. Thank you so much.
Catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.